Hi everyone, this is Joseph, this is Gabby.
Hello.
Hi everyone. Today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to start with the success story filming. We're going to be talking about what happens when a case gets approved for 601 and then they have to do the waiver at the consulate and you face an administrative processing. So we just went through a couple of those. Gabby's going to walk you through exactly what happened and so we can share with you guys how to successfully prepare, because a lot of people get their waivers approved but they get stuck at the consulate. And that's actually the worst nightmare, right? Because you think you've succeeded, you've left the US, and it's almost bait and switch. They got you out of the US and they don't let you back in. And the whole family's waiting for you. It's terrible, it's scary, and we wanna walk you through that process. And I know most videos kind of just talk about the process, or most videos talk about just focusing on 601, which is the hardest part, but how to actually overcome administrative processing at the consulate. This last mile, this last step is really, really important. And so Gabby's gonna share that. We're gonna do that first, and then we'll take questions. And then we will do the news. And today's news is gonna be talking about the H-1B updates and the 100,000 that you have to pay, who doesn't have to pay, and the unintended consequences of this, right? And so I'm really excited. We have a full program for you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Galen's gonna record all of it and then be asking it on your behalf. So thank you. Let's get started. Ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to be sharing about the last two waivers that were processed in Ciudad Juarez specifically. The first one is a gentleman about early 40s. We started his case in 2020. Right in the middle of the pandemic, the wife was only a permanent resident when we filed the petition, so that petition took a little while because of that priority wait time and the visa bulletin and stuff. But then she naturalized in 2022. So as soon as she naturalized, we had to do an upgrade for the petition category. So these are things that normally happen with the waivers just because of the long processing time. So people becoming citizens, or families having more children, or, a lot of changes that go on throughout the entire process. So we did the upgrade category that kind of sped things up. Then we actually had to file the waiver, waited about 2 years for the waiver to be approved. And then once the waiver was approved, we actually had to request for the interview. So that takes another 4 to 6 months from Ciudad Juarez to schedule the interview. But what happened was that he finally gets ready, goes to the interview. We had to do a lot of update on the paperwork, affidavit of support, and different things that you need to present at the interview. Police certificate. This gentleman came to the U.S. when he was 12 years old. So because he came when he was 12 years old, Mexican nationals do not need to get a police certificate. And this is where we think the problem was and why he was put into administrative processing, is because he went and got a police certificate, but then the consular officer said, you didn't need a police certificate from Mexico. You were only 12. It's only for children that left the country after the age of 16. So he goes to the interview. The interview went very smoothly. He actually got compliments about the paperwork. They said they had no questions about the paperwork. It's just a note on the system that said that he was undergoing background check processing. And because of the background check processing, he was not able to get an approval on the spot. But the officer said, I don't see why your case will be denied. So that was good news, kind of, but at the same time, it leaves him kind of like in a limbo. He was insured, and then we are on call 24/7 technically when our clients go out to the overseas interviews. So we were in constant contact, and I told them, I said, let me speak to Joseph. Brought it up, and then we basically told them we're going to continue to monitor the case every day to see when there is a new update. So before he left the consulate, he went to the information desk. They ran a queue on his case again, and the officer confirmed at the information desk that it was only a background check issue. And because he's a male, they have to undergo now more strict background check processes to make sure that he never had issues in Mexico and that the DOJ and the FBI were cleared from the US side. So He also had moved from California to Florida, so there was a change of address that had to be done at the embassy. So again, with the changes, I'm thinking that the government now wants to make sure these people are completely safe to come back. They are not a threat to the U.S. So there is a little bit more of, like just investigation. So he went back to his hometown, which was in Guadalajara. And he went to go see his mom after 35 years of being in the U.S. So it was kind of like mixed feelings because he didn't get the approval, but at the same time, he finally went to see his mom. He went to pay the respects to his father who had passed away. So he was very excited to do that, but then reality kicks in a couple days later, and then he calls, and then he says, have you guys seen any changes? And no, the case was still just in process. It just said in administrative processing, there is nothing. So good thing is they give you a results letter at the consulate, and it said, we don't need anything from you. Your case is undergoing administrative processing. So we have been doing this since 2013, 2014. Hadn't really seen this happen to any of our cases before. Usually we get approvals on the spot, and then people wait about a week and a half or two for the passports to be stamped, and then they come back to the U.S. But so it was new for us. It was new for him. With this administration, I think the pressure is even more on the people that leave the country because they don't know if any changes happen during the time that they are outside. How are they going to get back into the country?
That's right.
So the wife was desperate. He was desperate. So it's constant phone call from the wife, from the husband, but, just graciously trying to understand the situation and then just kind of relating to them in the sense that, if it were to be my husband, then I would be really concerned too, right? And then they have children. So just kind of like try to understand people and checking in the morning and in the evening before we went home until about 2.5 weeks later. The case is finally approved. So it was a matter of hours because we had checked that around 9 o'clock in the morning, and then around noontime, the wife just happened to ask, have you guys seen anything? And I said, yeah, we checked in the morning. It says it's still in processing. But let me check again just in case. And then as soon as we pulled up the case status from the NVC, it said visa has been approved and granted. So it's just, just that frustration, I guess, of having waited about 4 years and having processing. Then you get ready and then you go out, you have no result on the spot, but now you don't know what's going to happen. So, it was very exciting to see that it was approved. Then getting ready to come back again. We are on a standby as they re-enter the country just in case there are any questions, especially because this one took a little bit longer and it had never happened to us. So it was very exciting. He's back with his family. Then usually when you come back from Ciudad Juarez or any other country, you have to pay the fee for the green card to be printed and for the green card to be mailed to your home. So now that fee has been paid and he's just awaiting for his 10-year green card. This one will be a 10-year green card.
That's amazing. So much stress. The mom has to take care of all the kids. The father is out. What do you think they look for in these admin processing?
I think for him, it was more so the criminal record, just making sure that he did not have anything, especially with the address change from one state to another. I think they probably didn't realize that. And the consular officer noticed at the time of the interview. So she said, well, now let's check that you don't have any criminal record in Florida. And I think that was all. I don't think there was anything else. Yeah, he came when he was a kid, so it's not like he had much life in Mexico.
Right. And what about the second case?
So this one is a very exciting case. So this client came to us in about 2012, and he just did a consultation, and then they went home. They never came back. And then around 2018, they came back to our office. So just to clarify, back in 2012, the waiver, there was only the traditional waiver where the spouse had to wait outside in Mexico or in any other country if they needed a waiver for unlawful presence. So because of the separation at that time, the client decided they didn't want to do it. They had 4 young children at the time. So came back in 2018, just trying to revisit the options, They had a petition that was approved back from 2011. So that case was essentially just awaiting for the waiver to be filed. They had done a really good job keeping the petition alive, because you have to make contact with the NVC every year to make sure that your petition is not destroyed. So they came, they said, we know our petition is still open and approved. We want to know if she has any options to get a green card. So then we talked about 601A waiver. The advantage was she does not have to leave and leave the children behind. Kids are now a little bit older, but they are still going through their teenage years. So for her, it was still a concern. And there is always this, misconception of, if I go to Juarez, I'm going to be stuck out there because of all the horrible stories that people share. So very diligently just explaining to them, this is a safe process. We've done it many times to be confident that, it's just process. You just have to go out there to do your due diligence of showing up and then kind of like redeeming your unlawful entry and then entering with your visa. So we filed that case in 2021 as well. And we just got an approval earlier this year in April. So it took about 4 years for the waiver to be approved. This one did get an RFE, and I think it was because it had passed so long that now they want to know if they are still together, if they are still in harmony, like things are going well. So we did get an RFE. We got the case approved, and then she had been here for about 25 years, had not seen her family either. So most people come very, very young, and now they are like older adults. And, it's just the excitement of going back, but at the same time of leaving everything behind. In this particular case, the husband could not fly out with her, so she was going by herself with her younger son. So she even had to put the child on some sort of like online schooling so that he wouldn't lose his place in the school, and he could accompany the mother. And then the older children stood in the U.S. And it's just, I think as a mom, I can relate. I mean, I would be frightened. The moment you tell me, like, I have to leave my kids behind, you're going to do a process that is quote unquote safe, and we are already explaining all the dynamics out there, but at the same time, it's like, okay, what if that one thing goes wrong? Right? Like, what do you do then? Your family is broken apart. You took your child to a country he's never ever been to in his whole entire life. Usually I hear stories of people going back to Mexico after many years, or even taking their children. The kids get sick. The food is not the same. Like it's just very, very scary. So had to do a field strategy and mock interviews with her, just to kind of like help her feel a little bit more confident. Again, just being on a standby, I think, is key for these cases. People just really want to make sure that they are not alone.
Right.
And I know it's just a phone call and it's just a text, but I think just that makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. So we try to be understanding in that sense. So she went out there. So her interview, they did not ask her many things. She said it took about 5 minutes for the actual interview. So just for the people that are not aware, there is a 2-step process for the interview nowadays. The first day you go and turn in all your paperwork. They review everything. That one is usually no-brainer for us. They just have to go through documentation. They collect everything prepared for the second officer that's going to do the interview. Second day, 5 minutes. What is your name? Where do you live? What's your husband's name? Who petitioned for you? Congratulations, your case is approved. So those are usually most of our cases. She got the approval on the spot, and then she went back to her hometown. Usually our clients go back to their hometown after the interview. They don't want to wait in Ciudad Juarez. It's a lot more expensive for them to wait out there. And then they get a chance to see their family. They are already in Mexico. So she went back to her hometown in Durango. Had a really good time with her family. Now, you get to see the dynamic between one that was just so scared that wouldn't be able to come back, or how long he was going to have to be out there. Usually, administrative processing can actually take up to 6 months to be resolved.
That's so crazy.
That is a scary,
your
crazy.
job, your house,
your children,
your
spouse. Yeah.
All the laundry that piles up if the mom leaves. It's crazy.
Yeah. And all the soccer practices you miss, and all the school events that you would miss if you're out there for 6 months. It's crazy. So anyway, so she got it on the spot. She went back and just waited about 7 days for the passport to be delivered to her house. And then she came back without any problems. This one actually got 2 visa stamps on her passport.
Oh, okay.
So we don't know that, just, mistakes that happen at the consulate. So, but there were 2 different stamps on her passport. So when she entered through San Isidro, they cancel one of the visas.
Uh-huh.
And they stamped the other one because obviously she can't use
Yeah.
2 visas on her passport. So when I contact her to say, how did everything go? Did you, are you back home or whatnot? I said, can you send me a picture of the stamp, the entry stamp, so we have it on record for your naturalization? She sends me the visa that was canceled.
Oh, geez.
And I'm freaking out.
Right.
And why was your visa canceled? So I immediately called her and I said, hey, what was the problem? And then she says, oh, there was no problem. They were very nice. And I said, wait, but your visa was canceled. And she's like, oh, I didn't notice. I just know that I'm back and I don't. So people don't really pay attention. The excitement is there and, it's just like I'm back home and I'm safe and that's all that matters. But, as law office, we are responsible for making sure that everything goes smoothly. So when I asked her to double check where the stamp was, she says, oh, yeah, I just noticed I have 2 stamps. And I said, oh, that's why they canceled one, because you can have 2 valid visas on one passport. So now, because that's the endorsement for them to travel for the 1 year until they get the green card. So she gave the other stamp, the entry stamp, and everything was fine. So many things, so many details.
Going to these interviews, I mean, you can have the best strategy, you can have the best waiver, everything can get approved, but it's just on paper. If the client goes by themselves or doesn't have the courage to end up leaving the US and go to these interviews, because we've seen that happen before, then it was all for naught. They just don't go, they don't actualize it, they never actually get the green card. So winning the waiver, you can have the best team prepare for you, but you ultimately still have the courage to go. And then when you do go, you need to have the confidence to face the officer and to be able to answer the questions and demonstrate the hardship. Even if it's a 5-minute interview, the officers are trained to pick up lies. And these clients, what they need at those moments is not necessarily just better strategy or better legal knowledge or better case law. They need somebody to hold their hand, to encourage them, and to walk them through the process every step of the way, before the interview, mock interview, right after the interview, when the visa gets issued, and when they come back through CBP, right? Crossing the customs line and be able to re-enter the US. I mean, it's not done until it's done. If everything before that is just planning, it's just a wish. I wish I can have a green card. I wish I can have my waiver approved. But just wishing, and it's not done until it's actually done. And then once they cross back in, the green card arrives. And it has to be right too. We've seen names wrong, birthdays wrong, age wrong. You have to renew it, get a new one again. But it's not done until it's definitely done. And then they get the green card, and then they can finally petition somebody else, or when they become a citizen, they can finally petition somebody else, right? These guys, they wait here for 20 plus years, 30 plus years, no criminal record. They have so much ties to the U.S. They have 4 children here. It's crazy how much work is required to make it happen. And this is already the 601A for some of them, right? It's already the easy version. It's still this hard.
Yeah, I see time and time again, people go back to their home countries or their hometowns, and they feel like they don't belong there.
Right.
They don't belong anymore. That's just not, that's just not who they are anymore. And it's just crazy to me how we just become so, so apart from our own roots.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, somehow you come to the U.S. and you're somehow reborn in a way.
Yeah.
Because now you're so Americanized that when you go back home, it's you don't belong here. What am I even doing here? Is this who I used to be?
Yeah.
And that's crazy, because a lot of the time, especially this last situation, says, I want to go back home. I love seeing my family. I love eating the good food. I love the opportunity to be here is a blessing, but I need to go back home.
Yeah, right.
So it's just that change of mind, and the difference is, it's impressive. It's really incredible to see how people, we just change, we evolve, and then when you go back, it's this is kind of what I wanted, but now I realize I really, I really need to go back to who I am now.
Right, right.
So, yeah.
You live your whole life here feeling you don't belong. You live your whole life here not being recognized. You live in the shadow. You are fearful. And the public doesn't, quote unquote, accept you, especially in this day and age now, in 2025. But then once you go back, you see you don't belong there either. Your identity, your values, your way of life, and then you're stuck between two worlds. This is the immigrant life, immigrant struggle.
Yeah, definitely. But I think, just being able to relate, and being able to just be human and understand that, like you are leaving everything behind. And you are trusting that, your legal team is doing the right thing, that you are capable. So we're here just to support you. We're going to cheer you on. You're going to be okay. And half of the time we have to repeat it over and over again. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Just know that it's going to be okay, that you can do it, that you're so capable, that it's all on you now. Because consulate, they don't allow the attorney to go with anybody. So, the spouse cannot go in with them to the interview. It has to be just the applicant by themselves. It's every consulate, every country. So it happens all the time, all the time.
Any questions?
Yes. So Gaby is with us for another 10. She does a lot. She's our senior paralegal, case manager for our family department, Spanish department. So I'll focus on those questions. We are getting some questions about H-1B, who is exempt, special interest and stuff. So we'll talk about that a lot in a few minutes, right?
Yeah, right.
So for now, is there any updates on the final ruling for DACA?
Not yet.
Nope. Still waiting. USCIS needs to issue their decision.
Okay, so feel free to add more questions. Do you think it's still viable for physicians to get a national interest exception for the H-1B fee?
I don't know. We haven't done it yet. I would always argue and I would try, because you never know until you try, right? Like we got the national interest exception for a interior designer a few years ago. A lot of these are just in the air arguments. The law needs to be strict, right? The law needs to be strict. There's exceptions that apply on a case-by-case basis, and then it's just up to the officer. So when you prepare a case well, you file it, the officers are going to ask their supervisor, and if not many people are applying, to them, their job is in danger. They violate the U.S. code when suddenly 100 people apply and they approve 100 of them. If everybody gets approved, then the exception doesn't really exist, right? But if nobody's really applying and you have a good argument, well, then why not, So when in doubt, just try. And again, what's there to lose, right? So if you have a good case, just make the argument.
So yeah, feel free to ask more questions. The interesting thing about the H-1B for me was they say email us your documents at H-1B exception. Yeah. Is that normal?
It is not normal. It is very, very rare to have that. This administration is doing things that's very unique, but they are completely changing the landscape of how immigration law is practiced. And, because again, for, the better century in the United States, right? As we're ramping up with the tech jobs, with the H-1B, there was no lottery before, and then it became a lottery, and then it becomes stricter, and then now suddenly there's a 100,000 fee. Things are changing so fast. So the least they could do is provide this email. So hey, if you have an exception, at least email us so we can adjudicate and review, right? I wouldn't expect a fast response within 3 days, though.
Right. Yeah. So Gaby, how do you try to approach making clients feel comfortable because it is such a scary thing, like we talked about?
Yeah, I think I have to share the past experiences and the most recent experiences that have been very successful. So I usually tell them, yeah, we had a client go about 2 months ago and they came back perfectly fine, it's just a process that you need to go out there with. So just sharing past experiences, letting them know that the law has not changed, that, their case is still in the same process as everyone else's was a couple months ago. So just relating to them and saying, yeah, I do understand it's scary, but just know we have tried our very, very best to prepare you. And we are going to be here if you need anything. So even though you're going alone, but you're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's any hope for the lawsuit in California to get an injunction against the fee?
I personally think that this will stay, and it will be modified. It will stay. They will probably win. The government the White House will probably win this battle. There could be different fees talking about disruption of business practice, etc. But eventually, it will become more so codified because the presidential has that authority on the border, right? And they have the authority on the consulate. And so there are legal nuance arguments saying that this is completely disruptive and you're overstepping the bounds and it's up to Congress. But I mean, Presidential Proclamation could completely just stop it all anyways. There's a travel ban worldwide for all of these positions. And I think they played it quite well with these updates saying, if you're in the United States and you file change of status, the fee doesn't apply to you, right? Of course, USCIS still has to adjudicate it, but if you're in the United States, it doesn't apply to you. It's not them giving grace and being kind. It's the fact that they don't have authority. They won't be able to win that legal battle. You see what I'm saying? So I'm going to get into that update a little bit more clearly, but I think they played it very clearly, and so I think they have a strong chance in winning it, and that's why I think it's here to stay.
Yeah. It was so nice being here today. I love sharing our success, our clients' stories, just how we are able to help them out. But I do have to go have another appointment. So thank you so much. I will see you guys next time.
Oh, interesting. I called you guys and you said y'all not taking new cases. Interesting.
Yeah.
Depends on what case category, I guess.
Right. Yeah. We are quite swamped with a lot of different case categories. A lot of times we specialize in things that maybe it needs to be a 2-week or 3-week turnaround, right? Something that's really, really complicated. You need a lot of people to work on it. Those are ones that we really focus on. Now, if you have a case that, could take a month or 2 months, and then it's pretty simple. A lot of times what we do is we do the online consultation format where we give you the guidance so you could just do it yourself. You don't have to hire a law office to do the whole thing, right? We give you the guidance, we teach you the key points, and boom, you're done. Now, obviously it's not done until it's done. You might have to wait a year for approval, etc. Or if there's a hiccup, then you could do a request for evidence, strategy discussion. All that is fine, right? But different case categories, we are quite limited. We don't, again, we're just like a business. We only have about 20, 30 people here at the firm, and we're processing like hundreds of cases every month. So, there is a bottleneck.
Yeah, they say they have a master hearing coming. Do you take cases like that?
Well, yeah. So, even more so, right? We don't do asylum cases, and we don't do the court cases as well, right? Now, if it's our own individual clients and that ended up in deportation court that have master hearings, then sometimes we end up doing it, but that is not our wheelhouse. That is not primarily what we do. In immigration, it is generally broken up into 3 different types of immigration lawyers. There's the deportation court hearing lawyers, asylum lawyers, deportation master hearing lawyers, marriage hearing lawyers, and then there's the business immigration cases, and then there's the family immigration cases, right? So Gaby represents the family division. I represent the business division. We don't have a court division yet, where we partner with really capable people, but we only do that for our own, cases, right? So, we just can't do it all, and we really just want to do the things that we do well, right?
Do you think for physicians is it possible to apply for EB-1A instead of H-1B to avoid the fee?
We've done plenty of EB-1A cases for doctors and people who are in the medical profession. It's certainly possible. Here is the nuance that you need to prepare for because,
Can I have you
yeah. So USCIS likes to issue this request for evidence. They like to say, in a very pompous manner, the United States have the best doctors. We have the highest medical training, and what can you do that we cannot, essentially? And we've seen so many of these type of requests for evidence, right? So directors of major hospitals abroad, they try to be able to get a green card to come in. They get this kind of request for evidence. They've already have 30, 40 years of experience. They're very wealthy. They're very capable, but they don't have a medical license in the U.S., so they can't practice what they do. So that's the difficult thing that you have to overcome. I could share a little bit of how we were able to overcome it for the previous clients. We look into their history of achievements, the type of surgeries or type of patients that they see overseas, and what kind of thing that they specialize in. chances are, whatever you have done, whatever our clients have done, is not something commonly seen in the U.S. Now, obviously, if you're a general practitioner, you're just treating cold symptoms, it's going to be hard to make that argument. But if you particularly focus on some sort of treatment and some sort of disease, the U.S. might not actually see that because people's body types, people's struggles, people's methodologies, right? That maybe the U.S. solves this type of illness by just over medicating, but you focus it with traditional medicine or with exercise or with tech. It's a different solution the U.S. doesn't have because our healthcare system doesn't, quote unquote, allow it. Well, now you have an expertise that we don't have in the U.S., so you make that argument, right? So we've done, we've done plenty of arguments like that.
What's the processing time for EAD nowadays?
Depends on what kind of EAD, but usually I would estimate about 6 months.
Is it possible to reopen a deportation case from 2017?
Not likely. Something you could try. It's been done before. Right now, they're very hesitant to do that. The ones that they are reopening are the ones that they closed themselves, and people are still here in the U.S. And so immigration courts are reopening those to deport them again. So those are the ones that they are reopening. But if your cases has already been closed and you're outside of the country and you want it to be reopened, that will be extremely hard. If you're inside the country and it's been closed and you need it to be reopened in order to file for adjustment benefit, you just need to have a really good argument saying that this is the one thing that's preventing you from adjusting, right? So you want to prepare that equity argument.
My husband is from Mexico. I'm a U.S. citizen. He entered with a work visa. What is the time frame?
U.S. citizen, non-immigrant, came into the U.S., has a work visa. The time frame to get a green card, I'm assuming, right? Mary petition. The formal response that the firm gives out is approximately a year and a half, because we can't predict the future. We don't know how long USCIS takes. Recently, we've been seeing cases get approved as fast as like 6 months, 3 months, right? Provided that it's good case. So these are like historic speeds, and we've only been seeing it like sort of like this year. And then if you roll back a couple years ago, the year and a half sometimes could drag on for 2 years. But yeah, I mean, file it and so it's anywhere between 3 months all the way to like a year and a half before he gets his green card.
What's the update on asylum applications right now?
We don't have asylum applications updates because our office doesn't do asylum cases.
Can I do an N-600 if my mom is a citizen through her mother?
Yes, you could do N-600. There's a lot of things you have to prove, right? Your grandmother's residency, your mother's residency, do they qualify? Do you qualify to go under them? Just know you can only do it once, and if it's denied, you have to do 290B, motion to reopen, to apply again. So it's very tricky and it's very nuanced.
Does an I-130 with planned consular process take longer to get approved than within 485? So I-130, consular process, is that longer than a 485?
It's about the same. We've calculated this again and again, especially last week's live. You could see Margaret. We actually parsed it out very detailed between the K-1 visa, the I-130. It ends up being about the same. And so it really depends on your lifestyle, right? And so some people, they say, I need to be together and I need to be in the U.S. together. That's a non-negotiable. Then I-130 45 is just that much better, right? If some people say, I don't mind waiting outside for an extra 6 months to a year, that's not a big problem. Then, and it's to some people, I need to keep on working. If I'm in the U.S. and I might not be able to work for 6 months to a year because I might not have my work permit, that is a deal breaker, then don't do the U.S. route, right? And so we've seen so many of these kind of things play out.
How long does it take to get approved after my 42B is approved? Sorry, how long does it take to get the green card after the 42B is approved?
Congrats. Most of the time after 42B is approved, the processing unit with USCIS takes about 1 to 3 months if everything goes smoothly. The court has to transfer it to USCIS. USCIS approves it, and then the card gets mailed out. If there's delays, call and then or use Emma to kind of track the case. Yeah.
My wife is a permanent resident. Is it true that she cannot come back into America? That's being said on TikTok.
Say that again?
My wife is an LPR. Is it true that she can't come back into the United States? They're saying that on TikTok.
That is not true.
Depends on
Yeah.
if
So having a green card, you are a lawful permanent resident. You have rights to be in the U.S. When you come back into the United States, the CBP officer, the border officer, they have a right to inspect you. They will admit you unless one of these things apply, right? I think the law is like 1011 USC. Anyways, they have to admit you unless one of these things apply. So, of course, they could deny your entry based on national security grounds, but they could deny U.S. citizens on national security grounds, right? So that's number one. Number two, if you've been outside for over 180 days, well, then you might have been trained by a foreign military, right? So they can expect you and asking a few questions. If you have abandoned your green card, right? If they determine you've abandoned your green card, they could decide, hey, I'm going to confiscate your green card, but they still end up admitting you and you go see an immigration judge. So I could say confidently, we specialize in helping people who have green card holders re-enter the country, whether they left for 180 days or they left for the U.S. for 13 years. That's like our highest, craziest case that we're able to help somebody come back in. But we do anywhere between like 2 years out, 3 years out, 5 years out, people who have criminal records, people who have a warrant, right? Because they failed to pay a traffic ticket, and then now that rolled into a warrant. They left the U.S. They didn't know about it. Now they come back. How to deal with ICE? How to deal with CBP? How to deal with the court and the traffic ticket? And so as a green card holder, you definitely have the right to come back in. It's just about how to go through that process successfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a lot of videos on this topic on our YouTube channel.
Right.
Will entering the green card lottery impact my E2 visa because of the immigrant intent of the lottery?
Probably. I haven't seen a case denied yet because of that. Most of the arguments that I've seen where E2 is denied for immigrant intent is because they have a U.S. citizen child here. So they crossed the border, or they entered with a valid visa, they gave birth, they left, they applied for E2, and now they say, hey, you have a U.S. citizen child. We don't believe you have a plan to come back to the home country, right? We believe you have immigrant intent and deny you.
How can I talk to you about my case?
On our website, you can book a consultation. And there are a lot of different, whether you want to speak Chinese, Spanish, or English. If you only want to talk to me, I'm flattered. Just book the consultation and say you only want to talk to Joseph, right? But and then somebody else will reach out back to you to kind of coordinate a time to see when I'm available. But generally, we have such amazing account managers, attorneys here who specialize in different things, right? So sometimes when I talk with you, I might not even know, right? For example, I'm not an expert on N600s. I'm not an expert on detailed H-1Bs or EB2, EB3s, and so, but yeah.
What does it mean my visa status was refused for administrative processing, and now it's saying ready?
So you might have gotten approved, right? So visa admin processing is just them going down and doing a deeper check on your case. If it's ready, then it's probably approved. You get the visa and you come back to the U.S.
How many years do I need to prove my mom was in the U.S. before I was born in December 1983 in Mexico? This is about the citizenship through mom.
Through mom, okay. I recommend booking a consultation with the Spanish department, and you'll be directed with Gaby, who you saw earlier sitting here. She does all the N600 cases, right? Because again, so many Hispanic people have gone through the citizenship process to got their citizenship, and birthright citizenship is so powerful. So that would be my recommendation.
Dismissed misdemeanor. I'm married to a U.S. citizen. I came on a visa. Can I get a green card?
Repeat that again.
I have a dismissed misdemeanor.
Okay.
Came in on a visa.
Okay.
Married to a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
Can I get a green card?
Yeah. Prove that you have good moral character, right? So that is the central issue. You fulfill all the other requirements. You came on a visa, you valid, admission, and then now you're married to a U.S. citizen, so you could file for adjustment of status based on 245A. Now the central question before the immigration officer is, do you have good moral character? You have a misdemeanor. And if you just analyze that misdemeanor, it's not a stain on your character, and you have all these other things that's bolstering your claim, and to be able to get a green card, you should be able to succeed.
Can someone get denaturalized years later if the government finds out he was already a derivative citizen?
Let me get this straight. You are a citizen. You are also a derivative citizen. Will they denaturalize you because you somehow can get citizenship in two different ways? Is that the question?
Mm-hmm.
I guess my answer is the government is not interested in denaturalizing anyone unless there's something in it for them, right? There's no quota for the U.S. to denaturalize as many people as possible as of now, right? There's a quota for ICE to deport people who have no status in the U.S. That there's a quota there, but if you're a citizen, there's no quota to say, hey, we need to go and deport so many people. There are mafias, there are gangs, there are people who are unsavory who are here, and they have a lot of assets and they're very wealthy, but to go after them and to battle them through court, kind of complicated. If the U.S. is able to denaturalize them first, freeze all their assets, well then they lose all their rights and the government can take out everything. Whether you think that's good or bad, fair, if that's fascist, if that's a power play, that's up to debate, right? But that is, from my understanding, from following when the Obama presidency started the creation of this denaturalization plan. So for the past 10, 12 years, I've been following it very closely. There are a lot of fraud of people who got green cards and then became citizens. To the best of my knowledge, USCIS is not going after individuals, they're going after organizations and criminal rings and things of that nature because it costs the taxpayer a lot of money, it costs the Department of Justice a lot of money to spend the time and energy to denaturalize each individual.
Should we have a lawyer physically with us when we go to our I-130 interview?
For our cases, 95 to 98% of the cases that we file, we say you don't need a lawyer. That's us, and we already do the difficult cases. So if you're not a difficult case, my advice is probably 100% you don't need to, or 99, you can't be at 100%. However, this is the only point when you might really want a lawyer. If you feel like there's something tricky and the officer might be discriminatory towards you, and you, based on your own personal experience, right? If in your own life, you've gone through the immigration system, you've gone through customs, you've gone through the visa, somebody might be discriminatory against you. You might not be treated fairly. You want an extra safeguard. That's when the lawyer is helpful. The lawyer is not going to be able to do anything for you because they're sitting in back of you. They can't talk. They're just documenting what happens.
I got a notification that USCIS took action on my case after I sent my renewal for DACA. What does that mean?
That they probably received your case. Yeah, I wouldn't think too much about it.
Yeah, I remember our partner Ellie, who does he go to the I-130 interviews?
Yes. Yes.
And so yeah, he has all these stories about horrible things happening, and then he can
magically make it work.
Yeah, right.
It's definitely powerful when you have an attorney, but again, it's expensive, and again, you don't want to just hire some attorneys can make the situation worse. I have to be clear, and I have to say that. I'm not talking about just preparing. I mean, obviously, a lawyer who puts together a case, fills out everything incorrectly, files it, gets the case denied. That's obviously really bad and subject to malpractice, right? But even appearance attorneys, right? I remember when I was an attorney yet, and I was serving as a translator, and I mean, I've been working as an intern. I know some immigration law, and I remember the client hired a lawyer just on the spot, and then we went in, and the lawyer was giving the client wrong information, and I was translating between the lawyer, the client, and the immigration officer, and I was freaking out, and I did something, I don't know, maybe semi-unethical. Should I admit it on live? Basically, the lawyer told the client to say something, and I'm supposed to translate it to the client, to the officer, but I knew the right answer, so I kind of phrased it in the right answer, and the client used my answer to talk to the officer, and the officer understood it, and I translated it back. But I basically was just ignoring the attorney, because the attorney was saying everything wrong, right? And I was just like, this guy needed to get this barred, right? Like, seriously. And then I went to law school. It's like, if that guy could be an attorney, man, for sure. But anyways, having the wrong help can harm you. That's my point, you know. And then if you want to hire the right help, it could be expensive, you know. And so again, just for whatever it's worth, we do difficult cases. 90% of our cases, we don't recommend an attorney. We recommend doing a very detailed prep before going, right? Because ultimately it's you and the officer, so you need to be well prepared, well documented, and you're able to execute. Having an attorney, and if you don't prepare and you just have an attorney sitting behind you, and then you spend your money doing and energy doing that instead, that's a wrong place to put your energy, right? So that's our recommendation.
The last question, I just got detained by ICE in the Miami airport.
Shoot, I'm sorry to hear that. Any updates? Anything that you want to share?
What do you think about felony if I have a green card? This is someone else.
Oh, this is someone else. Yeah. Okay. It depends on what the felony charge is, and if it's a significant offense, and if it's a significant moral character flaw, then they could put you through ICE and detention, and you might have to be bailed out, right? Because you have a green card, there's a high chance you will be able to be bailed out, but you still have to go through immigration court to prove that you are not deportable, and maybe you want to argue the 42A to be able to win that to get your green card back. Now, if it's a drug offense, it's almost guaranteed you're going to be have to go through detention, and the bailing out process could take weeks, if not months. So that's the situation with ICE. They are not doing, well, I mean, yeah, so they themselves are not doing as many bonds as they used to, and they're pushing it all into immigration courts, so cluttering up the backlog in the immigration courts even more. So right now we're going to start officially the new segment about the H-1B and the unintended consequences of this new H-1B regulation. So we officially got it from USCIS. Now we know very clearly that if you're in the United States and you do a change of status, the $100,000 does not apply to you. However, if you're outside of the US, even if you have an H-1B approval in the past, that was, and it's no longer valid, and you need to file a new H-1B, sorry, the $100,000 does apply. So there's a lot of people in 2025 who filed the H-1B and got approved, and they need to go overseas to get the visa, come back. They're not affected. They're fine. That's good. People who are currently on H-1B and they need to file an extension, they're in the US, that's fine. Here's the people who are stuck. They had an H-1B. Maybe they got fired. They couldn't change their status to something else in the US. They left and they went back abroad. And now they need to file a new petition. They already had an H-1B in the past, but they now need to file a new petition overseas. Unfortunately, based on how we're reading it, that $100,000 applies because it's a new petition overseas. If you are in the United States doing a change of status, it doesn't apply. If you can find a way to get back into the United States as a tourist, as a student, as an L1B, as an O1B, as an O1A, if you can get back into the United States and then file a change of status, the $100,000 fee doesn't apply. But if you're abroad and the US employer needs you, sorry, that new employer needs to pay that $100,000 fee. So there are plenty of people, and we've seen so many people in the past year, 2 years, 3 years, that got laid off by big tech and decided, I'm just gonna go back abroad, wait out this crazy storm. When a new employer hires me, then I'll come back, right? Unfortunately, now, H-1B, even though you haven't used up all your time as an H-1B, you can recapture a lot of time that you were abroad. that 100,000 fee might still apply, right? So that is the scary thing. Now here's the unintended consequence. It's going to be hard for a lot of people to get a B1, B2 tourist visas back to the US. They're extra strict. They're also checking social media, and they can simply reject people based on the 214B. You have immigrant intent, right? Maybe you have family in the US. Maybe you've been in the US for too long. Maybe you have family, you don't have enough assets abroad. You don't have a stable enough job abroad. I don't believe you are truly a tourist that you're willing to come to the US. Or the wait time simply is just extremely long, right? For most people who don't know, a B1, B2 tourist visa could take, in some countries, more than 2 years before your first interview. Think about that. It's not a 1 week, 1 month, 3 months thing, right? If you think getting a DMV appointment here in the US is extremely long because you have to wait a few weeks and there's no walk-in appointments, for a tourist visa just to come to the United States to visit Disneyland in some countries could be 2 years. Some a little bit shorter, 3 to 6 months, but still. And then that's if you get approved, right? What if you get denied? Then you have to reapply in another 2-3 years, right? So tourist visa is going to be hard for many people who were in the US and who left and don't have enough strong ties, and people need to get a tourist visa. So a lot of people are going to be forced to do an F1 visa, right?
And entering on a tourist visa, then adjusting, that's misrepresentation, right? Because you have the immigrant intent.
Oh, good question. So let's go back to that. If you get a tourist visa or if you get an F1 visa, you come into the United States and then you change your status to an H-1B, you still have to have USCIS's approval, and they just explicitly write it in there. If USCIS denies you, then you still have to pay the 100,000 fee, and that basically because USCIS denies your change status, you have to leave abroad, and then now you have to come back, and so you have to pay the 100,000 fee, right? So, which means there is this possibility that I foresee. Somebody comes in as a B1, B2 tourist visa or an F1 international student visa, and then they change their status, and let's assume they fulfill no misrepresentation, right? They are true tourists, and then they change their mind, and then they want to file for H-1B. There's no H-1B allows for dual intent, for immigrant, whatever. They fulfill that, it's not a problem. But USCIS somehow denies the change of status, but approves the H-1B on the condition of the 100,000 fee. That is totally foreseeable. Right? Meaning you fulfill the H-1B requirements. We believe your position is specialized. We believe the employer needs you. On all accounts, you fulfill the requirement. But we're denying this change of status because it's discretionary. So if you just pay the 100,000 fee, we will approve it, and you can get a visa abroad and come back in. That is going to be a possibility that we see in the future. Now, hopefully, you don't have to go through that, right? Hopefully, whether it's a B1, B2 or an F1 international student, you come in, you study, whether you get your new master's degree, and then you do a change of status, and then the 100,000 fee doesn't apply to you. That's probably the safest route by not having to pay the 100,000, right? Instead of 100,000 going to the government, you essentially pay that 100,000 in tuition fees and living costs to the school. But you sacrifice 1 or 2 years, you do additional schooling, you pay the high tuition fee. And so for most people who are the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds who want the H-1B, who need the H-1B, that's the only way for them to come. They can't do a E2 investor visa because of their country of origin or nationality. They can't do a TN visa because it's been stricter. They can't do a O1 because they don't have enough extraordinary credentials. And they don't work for a cross-country company, so they can't do L1A or L1B. They can't do an immigrant petition. They don't have EB1A. They don't have EB2 or EB3. But they need to be in the U.S. They want to be in the U.S. They are forced to apply for master's degrees, pay the high tuition, and then still find a job, and then do the H-1B. So essentially dragging things out much longer. Now, if you're younger, you're still in school, basically forcing people to pay the high tuition to come to U.S. universities, right? That is essentially what this policy does. On paper, it is saying that by the proclamation, that's what I mean by paper, right? White House is essentially saying we don't want foreign trained, foreign educated individuals coming to the U.S. to take US jobs. But if these foreign nationals come into the US and become US educated, master's degree, essentially paying tuition, then we allow you to change status. That is essentially the unintended consequence. Why? How? Does this make sense? Does it not make sense? That's up to debate, right? Maybe the AI revolution is overblown, but right now, US employment, there are a lot of people who are graduating. They need jobs. The tech companies are laying off a lot of people. So protecting US workforce. Maybe that's one reason. Maybe it's because the universities are all closing down, shutting the border, because again, the US administration is cracking down on universities, but they still need to help the universities get propped up because they need tuition fees. Okay, well, maybe by doing this policy, it funds the universities with additional international students because that is the only stepping stone to get H-1B. Who knows, right? These are all conjectures and there's no direct, clear evidence, but that is the unintended consequence, right? You need to be essentially in the US with a valid visa in order to change status, in order to avoid that 100,000 fee.
Someone says you should acknowledge the issue of fraud finding impact for seeking B or even F entry with H intent.
That is exactly what you mentioned, Galen. Yeah, and I agree. So if you enter the country as a tourist and then within 1 week, 3 weeks, and you change status to H-1B, USCIS will challenge that, right? And so on our YouTube channel, you can see plenty of different change of status requests for evidence and how we were able to overcome it. Even suing the government with a motion to reopen because they denied it unjustly, right? Client came in as a tourist, they needed an extension, they denied it, saying that there's these ulterior motives. The client doesn't, right? And so we were able to overcome it. So if you come in as a tourist and then you change to H-1B, you need to prove that when you came in, you were a tourist. And when you applied for the tourist visa at the consulate, you were a tourist. And then something changed, and that's why you apply for the H-1B. If you cannot convince the officer, then your case will be denied, and you might have to pay the 100,000 fee, assuming that scenario exists. So it is not easy, right? It is definitely not easy, but that possibility exists.
Someone says, I feel like even with the exemption, a lot of companies just won't want to deal with visas at all. Since the rules keep changing, there's just too much of a trouble. They don't want to deal with it.
That is absolutely true. However, companies will keep on doing it. You know why? Because they have been doing it. In the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we've seen the H-1B get revised and changed again and again and again. Lottery, no lottery. Think about the normal H-1B application process. Just normally, how it was last year. A company needs a position. Okay, send out, post it on ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn, have all these resumes. They could interview all these different people to fill that position, but they don't. And they say, I'll give it to this foreigner, and then I will spend thousands of dollars to petition with the government. And once it gets approved, once the lottery gets approved, once the USCIS approves, I wait for them for maybe 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and then they come in, start October 1st, and then they work, and then if I fire them, I have to pay for their plane ticket to leave. Who in the right mind, what companies would do that? And so, but they still do, year after year. And that's because the companies actually need these individuals. And so, no matter what barrier people put up, the government, the 100,000, companies are still going to continue to do that. Maybe to a different varying degree, but people are going to still continue to do that. Why? There's lots of reasons, but I just don't foresee the H-1B completely being shut down. I do predict that next year, maybe winning the lottery will be much higher. So instead of maybe a 20-30% chance of winning the H-1B lottery, like this year and the previous couple of years, maybe less people apply, and so it jumps up to maybe 80-90% selection rate. Which for a lot of people, that's way better news. That's like saying, okay, if I pay $100,000 then I don't have to go through a lottery, or I almost guarantee I'll be able to get it, and then I'll be able to come in and work in the U.S. for 7 years. That 100,000 is really just prorated my salary, right? Like, I'm just randomly taking an example. If I come from a southeastern country, my annual salary is only 30 to 40,000. I come to the U.S., suddenly my salary jumps to 140,000. That 100,000 per year, span it out to 6-7 years, and I have to pay a 100,000 fee. Worth it, right? So you can imagine a lot of people, are willing to go through that.
So we'll wrap up the news soon. Last H-1B just for now. Aren't the legal arguments that only Congress can set the fees? Is that like a viable argument for the lawsuit? Why would that lose?
Yeah, that is a great argument. But here's the thing. The proclamation doesn't stop the H-1B. It's not adding a new fee for the H-1B application per se. It's just for the foreign individuals who are being petitioned to come back because of this, the fraud that they have detected of people circumventing the immigration law, which they have found. So it is more of a national security defense sort of proclamation, right? And so if you're in the United States and then you file, that fee doesn't apply to you. So they parsed it very, very closely. Had they said, we don't like the H-1B program, from now on, all H-1B programs have to pay the 100,000, they will get sued and they will get shut down. But they narrowly said it's only for people who are applying overseas, because that is what the presidential authority is. They could shut down all the consulates and nobody can ever get H-1B visas, right? And then so again, that is their position.
And it seems like a lot of the courts are really hewing to the president's authority and kind of deferring to that.
Right. Thank you guys for watching. I know there's a lot of information. I know immigration law is constantly changing. H-1B stuff, ICE, and 400 and everything else. Anything we see, we try to be able to provide these updates on a weekly basis. We can only, really do one or two things, where you do one success story and one news, but hopefully that provides a lot of context. And again, feel free to just jump in, ask your questions, and I do my best to answer everything. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.